Hello and welcome to the Train the Trainer for Changing Lives Through Childcare. My name is Kate Haythorne-Thwaite and I'm joined by my colleagues Donna Sheldon and Victoria White. And we've been recently delivering the Changing Lives Through Childcare sessions across the targeted local authorities. What we wanted to do and what we have recognised is that many parent family facing professionals have really benefited from attending these sessions during Childcare Works, Hempsall's commissions and more recently the Department for Education funded project. We want to support local authority colleagues to continue this training after the end of the support programme so that you can continue to reach new partners, refresh existing partners in their awareness of the 2-year-old entitlements and the difference that it can actually make to families. So as part of this process, what we're going to be doing is looking at how you can deliver these sessions locally. So the aim and the purpose of the Changing Lives Through Childcare workshops is to raise that awareness and make that huge difference for families. So during this session, what we want to do is increase your confidence, and we'll be looking at the aim and the purpose of the workshops, delivery recommendations, who should attend, so who you should be targeting these sessions at, key points to cover, any common questions that we seem to come across, and sharing throughout the session our experiences of delivering the sessions. We do know that the 2-year-old entitlement is a life-changing support offer for families. So we start off using this slide in the training, and you will receive, along with this recording, the case studies, the quiz, and also the lesson plan to support you in that delivery. And it's important that we really emphasise how childcare can change lives for both the children and the families. So this is something that we really do emphasise. But I think what's also important to do is acknowledge people's starting points. There'll be a range of levels of understanding and contact with families. Some of that will be limited contact, but some more detailed contact, and a whole different range of professionals that we'll look at who that should be very shortly. But it's about supporting their general awareness. And I think that's one of the key things to emphasise right at the beginning of the session is that we're not expecting them to become experts. What we're expecting is them to have greater awareness, confidence, and be positive when they're talking to parents and know where to go for information and where to signpost parents through. So please do reassure everybody that we're not expecting them to be the experts. Again, what we want to do is make sure that this is a clear message that comes out to everybody. Learning from our work with the target local authorities who have been using the What Works tool to identify the support that could be put in place to further increase the take-up of places. It has highlighted to us and to the local authorities the importance of a partnership approach in raising parental awareness of the 2-year-old entitlement. And I think where that works well, where that partnership works well, it benefits the families. So at the outset of the 2-year-old entitlement, which gosh now is some 15 years ago, partnerships were formed and worked relatively well. The majority of the target local authorities that we've been working with have stated that over time, those partnerships, for one reason or another, had drifted and lost the audience with their key partners, and recognised the pivotal role that those key partners play in supporting the take-up. So having up-to-date information about childcare does allow us to talk confidently with families and ensure children benefit from that engagement with high quality early years education entitlements as early as possible. So again, that's something that we like to stress throughout the training. So the childcare, the Changing Lives Through Childcare workshop, it is a short interactive workshop, usually delivered over 2.5 to 3 hours. As I say, designed for staff teams who work directly with families with preschool children, to support them to be confident and positive when talking to parents. It is about enhancing their role, and as I say, it's not deemed to be an extra. We have had on some of the workshops professionals who their main role isn't family facing, but actually they've attended to gain more information and supplement their work in other areas. So it's that broader messaging across the children's workforce. So in terms of delivery recommendations, if you're having an interactive workshop using the case studies and the quiz, we would recommend a maximum of 30 people to attend, to enable you to have those really good discussions. And right at the beginning of the session, it usually opens up lots of discussion, particularly busting myths around the different types of provider and what each can and cannot do. So definitely that's what we would recommend. Some people have gone for a more webinar style approach to engage more professionals, but that does then mean limited interaction. But it is possible. I think it is what I'm saying there. But there's still opportunity for Q&A. So you know, whichever model you go for is entirely up to you. In terms of the platform to use, if we're still using virtual delivery, our preferred platform is Zoom. And for us, that's because it has greater functionality for interaction. But do check, because some organisations aren't able to use Zoom and may have to use Teams. But having said that, what we have found is where some professionals can't use Zoom because of their organisational structures, they can access it if they've copied and pasted it into a browser. That sometimes sort of gets round that little bit of a glitch. And most people then do seem to be able to attend, but definitely something you need to check out before you start organising the sessions. But hopefully at some point we may be able to go back to face-to-face sessions. And as I say, we recommend 2.5 to 3 hours. Within that, I would definitely recommend a break. Just a short comfort break. We tend to do that round about the once we've explained about the additional support, financial support that families can access. That's usually the time we put in a break before we start thinking about them in their role. Okay, but Donna will pick up on that, I'm sure, as we move forward in this session. So in terms of who should attend, as many parent-facing, family-facing professionals as possible. Identify your partners early on. Who are your key family-facing professionals that you want to contact and get involved? We have found in some local authority areas that the pandemic, one of the positives of the pandemic is that it has reignited partnership working across the sector, more contact with other professionals. In other areas, it's been difficult. That's been one of the difficulties, and actually has contributed in some aspects to, you know, lower awareness among families, because there's a lack of understanding across all family-facing professionals. So, you know, these workshops are key for thinking about how you can build and develop those relationships and reignite them again. As I say, don't assume that everyone is aware of the entitlements. We sometimes need to be told things more than once. It's a bit like going shopping, isn't it? When you're buying something new, sometimes you have to listen to the sales talk 2 or 3 times before you fully understand and are able to make your decision. It's exactly the same with this workshop too. But from our experience of delivery, the workshops have been great networking opportunities to support a deeper understanding of the work of other partners and how they can work together to raise take-up. On a recent session I delivered, it was great. There was health visitors and children's centres there working together. The health visitor wasn't sure, well, where do I refer families to? And the children's centre straight away popped up, to us. This is where you need to be sending them. So it's great for that type of networking. So on the screen here, we've got a list, which is by no means exhaustive, of just some of the professionals and organisations that you may want to invite and include in any of your workshops. Another option, if you can't get them all together at one time, is to do separate briefings for individual professionals and organisations and approach it that way. But it works better if you have got that multi-agency approach, because there's greater networking happening. So I'm going to hand over to Donna now, who's going to take us through the workshop structure and some of the key points to include within the session. Okay.
Thank you, Kate. So the workshop itself has been structured to begin with awareness raising, and then it moves on to understanding and then considering the skills and approaches to use based on what we know works. And so, as Kate was saying, in terms of awareness, I think there's a real difference. You'll probably find there's a real diverse in terms of people's understanding of what is on offer and how the different offers actually combine together. All of the information is in the pack, and it's also there, you know, in terms of childcare, going onto the Childcare Works websites and the childcare choices. So all the information is there. It includes initial formative and summative assessment and the Q&A opportunities as well to be able to ask questions. And Victoria's going to talk us through some of the questions shortly that often get asked. But I think the key is that the information is out there. So if we haven't got it to hand, then we find it and we bring it back to somebody. It provides information and a deeper understanding of the entitlements, and it considers also the skills and the approaches that can be used and establishes everyone's role in influencing decisions. And I think, you know, when you're looking at the wider children's services, it's this element of it that it quite often gets raised during the sessions, is around, you know, not just having the knowledge about it, but also being able to influence parents' decisions and sometimes wider family members' decisions about using childcare. So quite a lot of the sessions that I've been involved with have been around dispelling some of the myths around childcare and around you know, kind of very traditional perceptions of what childcare is. A key theme throughout the workshop is personal values and opinions, and we know that everyone has views about childcare because, of course, the care of young children, it is emotive. We've all been one, and many of us have actually got our own children. So I think one of the really important aspects of this is for the attendees themselves to recognise their own feelings about using childcare and any of their perceptions about childcare. It's really important that we all acknowledge projecting our own views onto a parent who's not confident about using childcare might influence them and discourage them from taking up childcare. So this could disadvantage some children from, achieving improved outcomes, and particularly the most disadvantaged. So I think a lot of it is about building skills and approaches for being able to influence parents in a really positive way about the different childcare options. And I think about having that level of confidence, as Kate mentioned, not only in the entitlement and what help with childcare costs are out there, but also in understanding some of the barriers why some families choose not to use childcare, and having some of those responses for parents that can influence them very positively to recognise that the research tells us this is good for children. So in terms of what we're going to cover in the session, you will have watched the session, so you'll have had a good feel for what's covered in the session. And of course, as Kate says, all the resources will be provided so that you can carry these sessions forward. So it starts off by raising confidence and asking the group how much they already know about childcare. And it's a real opportunity, this, I think, for you as the facilitator of the training, to just know where the confidence is in the participants that are on your training session. So it's about, giving them the chance to those that have got all the knowledge to be able to shine and to be able to draw some of that knowledge out. And I think on all of the sessions that I've delivered, I've always recognised this real kind of difference in what some people know and what some people don't know, and celebrated that knowledge that's already there. So it's about being confident and positive and knowing where to go for the information and making a difference. That's the expectations. It's not that they understand and they could read, they could tell a parent chapter and verse about it. It's about them knowing about it and knowing the slight differences. So it is really all about changing hearts and minds. And I think, again, certainly from the training that I've done, a lot of the barriers is not necessarily not understanding the entitlement. It's more that families are choosing not to access it for lots of different reasons. So some of that may come out when you do your introductions right at the beginning of the session. They might talk to you about why some parents have declined using the offer. There's then a quiz in there, and this quiz again is a really good opportunity for you as the facilitator to be thinking about who's got the expertise in that team and where can you draw on that expertise, particularly for later on when we do the case studies. So I'll come back to that point. But the quiz, it's levels of knowledge and understanding of early learning and childcare. It's very varied, I've found, in terms of people's knowledge. And I think it is a very short interactive quiz, and it's there to gain an initial assessment of the level of awareness, also to dispel some of those myths that I was talking about before, and the misconceptions about childcare and what it's about. And it also prompts discussion. So the quiz is a really great opportunity to find, I think, to build confidence as well, as I've found that actually they know a lot more about this than they perhaps perceive themselves they do. It then looks at the types of early learning and childcare provision, and it's quite presentation-led, this part of it. So it's important attendees are clear about the range of childcare provision and what each has to offer. Again, there's the supportive document, the PACEY leaflet, that is there to guide that discussion, which is a really useful publication, and one that again is given out to the attendees. So also asking attendees to reflect on when and why families use childcare, focus attention on the families that they're working with, particularly those that are having, sort of different reasons for perhaps not attending childcare, and why some families choose not to access childcare is a brilliant opportunity to again give them some of those strategies for how do you influence that family to see the real benefits of childcare, and that it is important for families to use the childcare that best fits their own needs. So it does look, then it looks at the awareness of the entitlement, and this section of the workshop is about awareness raising. Again, you'll have a real wealth of expertise, and you'll have other people who perhaps know very little about it, and quite a lot of questions may get asked around the entitlement. At this point, it's about reiterating that attendees are not expected to remember all of this information. It's about being aware of it and knowing where to go for that information, and starting to consider how they can use the information with the families that they're working with to, again, you know, try and make strong recommendations around accessing childcare. It's also encouraging the parents to access the Childcare Choices website, to look at what childcare is available, and to look at the different types of childcare that they might want to choose from. It looks also then at the additional financial support available for parents, and I think this section in particular, we have to be very clear that we can never give a definitive answer on how much a parent might be able to access in terms of help with childcare costs through something like the tax credits or the universal credits, until they put their own details into HMRC's checker. They won't get a full account of exactly what they're entitled to. So our role is not really about telling parents how much they're entitled to, it's telling parents what's available. And so I think, you know, this section, again, we're strongly recommending that, that any professional who's advising parents of visiting the childcare cost calculator, and that even when they've, you know, if we were to put a parent's details in with them, that might be different when they put their application in. So until HMRC give them the definitive answer of that's how much you're entitled to, that's the final, that is sort of the final say on that, of how much that parent would get. So it's about using the calculators. And again, I think encouraging your attendees on this training to go off and have a play with those calculators and to put different amounts in and sort of see what different amounts come back out for the help with childcare costs can be really valuable in building their confidence in supporting families to access that as well. We look at the signposting element of it, and signposting and supporting families. It's fundamental to increasing the take up. It is a key question that often comes out, is where can we signpost parents to? The Childcare Choices website is definitely the place to go, but the local authority, of course, it is for you to share your local details as well, in terms of checking eligibility and you know, getting that additional brokerage support to be able to access childcare places where a family may be struggling to access. And then the family facing role, this is really the highlight of the workshop in terms of changing hearts and minds. At this point, some might feel a little overwhelmed with all that information that we've given to them. So it is really important to just remind them it's about raising confidence and not being an expert in this. We do start this session by getting attendees to consciously recognise their own personal views versus the professional roles of childcare. In our experience of the delivery, it doesn't necessarily raise any issues, as it doesn't involve any interaction from attendees. It is crucial, though, that to look at how they interact with families and can make the difference between that can actually make the difference between whether the family takes up that place or not. So it's that positivity around it that's absolutely essential to influencing parents in a really positive way about childcare. It's also about getting them to think about the families that they work with, because this can really help to focus their own mindset and start to think about the approaches that they're going to use with their families. We emphasise the importance of the conversation around a leaflet or a Childcare Choices website. The leaflet or the website on their own may not make the difference. It's about using that and opening up, using it as an opportunity to open up that communication around it. It's also important about knowing the community, and that, you know, understanding that community and having differentiating messages to be able to reach families in a way that makes sense to those families. It's, recognizing families might need time and need to be reminded more than once. And so some may need support to complete online eligibility checks or visits to providers. Highlighting that some families might have a fixed view about which provider they want to use, and that's fine if there's no waiting list there. But if there is a waiting list, then they're going to have to join that waiting list. So it's getting attendees to think about how they would support families to consider other options in that situation. We also use case studies for some summative assessment and to provide an opportunity to really draw it all together, to pull together all that knowledge. The case studies are designed for different families who are looking at, who are working with different professionals. So as far as possible, group attendees from similar agencies, you might want to look at those case studies and try and align them. If you've got one particular group of attendees, let's say you was going to do a session for purely nurses and midwives, then you might want to look at those case studies and align them to that kind of age group that they're most likely to be coming across. But there's a mix in there. There's 5 case studies. It's not necessarily about trying to solve the issues in the case studies. It's more about focusing on how they would introduce the entitlements and, what type of childcare might suit that family the best. So when delivering virtually, we need to make sure we ask the group to nominate someone to give feedback. And as the facilitator, if you're using Zoom or Teams, you can actually go into those different rooms. So you might want to set those rooms up, looking at the expertise in those different rooms, and maybe if you've got some local authority staff attending, maybe try and put one in each room so that they've got that little bit of support in there. I think if certainly using Zoom, you give a minute, it gives a minute's notice. So I always say to the groups, you're going into a breakout room, you'll get a minute's notice before you come back into this room. When you get that notice come up, you need to choose who's going to feed back. That doesn't mean to say they always do that, but it does help in them nominating somebody to feed back in that last minute. And then it's about being confident and being positive, and really, the whole program's been written around that and around building people's confidence and positivity around accessing those early entitlement places. And certainly from the work that I've been doing, I've come across a huge amount of positivity around this and around trying to get parents to access these places. So I think for me, it's more being about the confidence raising than the positive approach, because I'm finding that all of the professionals I've worked with have certainly wanted their families to be accessing these places for the children. So the final section really is about reflection. What can attendees do next? And an opportunity to ask questions. And leading on to that, I will pass you over to Victoria, who's going to talk to you about some of the questions that seem to come up a lot of the time.
Thank you, Donna. Thank you. So really using the quiz is a great way to try to dispel some of the common questions before they even arise. I've delivered this in a couple of different ways to a bigger audience where I haven't been able to use the breakout room facility because of the numbers that I was working with. But even in that circumstance, as opposed to being with smaller groups, and you can use the breakout room for the quiz, it still works. You can still give people that time to sort of process what their answers to the quiz possibly might be, without actually having to sort of discuss it or give their answer. So I think really if you use the quiz at the beginning of the session, when you've got an idea of those confidence levels, you've got an idea of existing knowledge and who you've actually got in the group, you can sort of bat a lot of the questions off before you even come to them. I think when I've delivered a session, sometimes people say, oh, I'm a bit overwhelmed. And to pick up on what both Donna and Kate have said, is it's really about raising that confidence in approaching it and how you approach it with parents, rather than thinking, okay, you know, let's see what knowledge you've actually got about all the different scenarios that might happen. So some of the questions that we might get asked, for example, would be around entitlement for the 2-year-olds, eligibility when there's no recourse to public funds. So it's knowing what the local process is for people to refer to. I've always when not only we're delivering this as a workshop, but when I've also had sessions where I've been the practitioner with the parent and sort of supporting them in making those choices around childcare, is made sure that I've had an actual go on the website myself. And I think that's just like really important, and getting that message across. So when you're delivering the training, you're saying to people, you don't have to know the answers to every single question and every scenario, but what you do know is where you can signpost. So certainly around the local processes, it's knowing who, what teams can they call. And it may be that there is a very niche scenario, but of course the local process will try to accommodate that. We want to accommodate these children into the childcare places rather than sort of putting up barriers so they can't have it. So that would be my sort of tip there, having that who you signpost to, and also having a play around with the resources, rather than thinking you as a trainer have got to know every answer to every question, and therefore, you know, the people that you're delivering to are feeling in that same position. So as Donna said, it's really about confidence and awareness. Thinking about what support there might possibly be for children with SCND. But if you're using the slides that we are suggesting, all that information is on there and in the notes. And I'm always very upfront as a trainer and say, look, you know, I'm not going to go on mastermind and answer every question there is about this process. I have to refer to my notes, and then that's fine for the delegates that you're working with, that they, you know, this idea of they're going to have to retain all this knowledge, that's not what we're asking for. And then thinking about how the offers fit in around the topic of safeguarding, and a big question is often around benefits, and do entitlements affect benefits? And I think the notes prompt you to say, and we use this when ourselves, is it's the same as school. So having that entitlement to a child 2-year funded place is not going to change anything in terms of benefits. So that would be my sort of tips around using that quiz. How, whichever way you do it, whether it's going to be using it in breakout rooms or more as a webinar, just take that time to have discussions around the answers to the questions, and then you are going to save yourself time later on, because you know the questions that come up will be probably less. But also be prepared, and for those odd questions that come out, I think actually I really don't know the answer to that, because, and sometimes don't get too bogged down in it, because I think for everyone else that's listening, if you've got one person who wants a very specific answer about that, knowing that you can pass them perhaps on to somebody within the local authority who can deal with that outside of the workshop is more beneficial than, you know, you spending ages trying to sort it out. So hopefully those tips from me will help with delivery. And I'll pass you back to Kate now.
Great, thank you very much, and thank you both, Donna and Victoria, for sharing your experiences of delivering the workshop. You know, for me, there's been some fantastic light bulb moments, as I like to refer to them as. So we hope that you found this short video useful in terms of supporting you to be able to roll out the sessions in your local area, because, you know, as we've got up here on the screen, you know, we've all got that role to play. We do know that childcare does support children to grow and develop and learn whilst preparing them for school. It helps us reach children earlier and identify if they have any unmet needs, being either learning development or perhaps welfare and health and well-being needs. It's that early intervention is key in both aspects. And importantly, it enables parents to make their own choices, their own economic choices. It may be that, you know, they want to go into training, to retrain sometimes for a different career path, or actually support them on their pathway and their journey to employment. So we'd like to wish you all the success with delivering your workshops locally, and hopefully increase the take-up locally of the 2-year-old entitlement. Thank you.